with the email that I sent out that had an agenda that I just lost. There it is. All right, so meeting is being live streamed. Okay, so I'm going to call us to order at 3:35 p.m. Pacific time. That's 6:35 p.m. Eastern time. And Madam Secretary, would you mind doing roll call of the executive committee for us?
Certainly. And if you don't mind, I usually also like to note what LNC members are present, even though they're not required for quorum. I usually like to include that.
Sure, that's fine with me.
Okay, so of the executive committee, Ms. McCardle is present. Mr. Smith?
I'm here.
Okay, Mr. Hagopian?
Here.
Okay, I am present. Of the non-officers, I have Mr. Bowen.
Here.
Mr. Elliott.
Here.
Mr. Nikela.
Here.
Okay, the remaining LNC members who are not executive committee members, Mr. Blankenship.
I'm sorry, Ms. Harless, because of the nature of the call, they're not going to have control over their microphone.
Oh, okay. I gotcha. Well, then we'll skip that for now, and I will just look at the registrant list and try to note that in the minutes. So the entire executive committee is here, Madam Chair.
Okay, fantastic. And we have at least one representative from the Ballot Access Committee. Now, the next thing that I have on the agenda is public comment. Before I do that, I would like to ask Todd Hagopian, how much time do you have to be with us on this call?
Yeah, my flight got delayed. I probably have about a half hour, maybe 45 minutes.
Okay. I am sorry your flight got delayed, and I'm also glad that we have you on the call. Any suggestions for how we want to deal with this? Because I want to make sure we get public comment in. I did put out an agenda, but I also want to get Todd's feedback before he has to board a plane. Anybody on the EC want to chime in?
Is there members who wish to give urgent feedback at the beginning, and then maybe we can move it to the end?
Okay, so the way that you're going to give public comment for anybody who's not familiar is you need to go down to the bottom to reactions and click the hand raise function. And we are going to call on members of the Illinois State Party and New Hampshire State Party. So you will be part of our discussion. So you can give public comment, but I just want you to know that that's not your only opportunity to speak. And Justin, yep, thank you, Justin. I'm gonna certainly call on you to have you weigh in. Okay, so I don't see public comment. I'm open to entertaining it at the end of the meeting. I think if there's no public comment right now, I'm happy to revisit it and revise the agenda towards the end. Why don't we move to the Illinois request if everybody's comfortable with that?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I was wondering if Mr. Hagopian has information, financial information,
Yep.
current balances and things like that, that we may want to hear first before he has to get on his plane.
Okay, well, I mean, I think that falls under the purview of Illinois because we're talking about whether or not we're going to give any money out. So, Todd, do you have anything you'd like to share with us? I know you sent an email in.
Sure. I will regurgitate that email, and if you guys can't hear me, I'll let you kind of read that off that I sent you. But essentially, we believe we'll know by the end of next week for sure that the convention receipts without fundraising will have covered all the convention expenses. The fundraising then will be above and beyond any convention expenses. That fundraising is at a minimum right now, $114,000 that should drop into the account. It is my understanding that we should be able to both pay back the loan and fund these requests if we so choose. And on the Illinois topic specifically, my recommendation is we for sure go through with the exact recommendation that they asked for, which was 15 at 50% and 15,000 at 115% of their minimum signatures. It's an interesting year where they have the right candidates going up against the right competitors. with a very good scenario and as well as matching funds. And if they get it, they have a solid chance of locking in ballot access for 4 years. I think this is a good use of our money.
Okay, thank you. I would like to hear from any other EC members, and then I would like to get some feedback from Mr. Seuss.
I had raised my hand, Madam Chair.
Oh, yes, go right ahead.
I know sometimes it's hard to see. Just FYI, I'm not sure if I forwarded this to the entire LNC, but I did speak with Ms. Matson, who was the one who had put in the recent policy manual change to protect convention funds so that we're paying our bills, which was an issue in the past. And I asked her understanding, and her understanding was that fundraising was not part of the segregated funds. It was only actual direct convention revenues, such as merchandise sales, ticket sales, add-ons. So the approximately 104,000 in convention fundraising is free to be used now. It's not segregated to pay the convention bills. I just wanted to make sure that was her understanding because it was mine and she concurred.
Excellent. Anybody else on the EC? Trying to watch for hands.
Quick question.
Yes.
I'm just wondering, as far as where we're at with our restricted funds for the budget for ballot access, I don't know if anyone's run the numbers recently, maybe Todd. This might be more of a question for the committee, but I just wanted to know where we were in line with our restricted funds, or at least our budgeted funds for ballot access for the year. Does it look like we're able to cover those costs?
Whoever has the answer to that, just blurt it out. And if it's Dustin and he doesn't have mic privileges, I guess he'll need to raise his hand.
Can we give Dustin free mic privileges since he's the only member of the ballot access committee here?
I don't mind. Waiting. Dustin, Nana, can you unmute yourself? I also don't know if Dustin is at work. I'm hoping.
I'm home and I can unmute myself. I don't have the answer to your question without pulling up the budget.
Do you know who would have the answer?
I guess the best bet's probably going to be for one of us to pull up the budget and check.
Okay.
It's been a very long time since I looked at those numbers. So
Understandable. Can you work on that while the rest of us keep chatting?
yeah, I'll go see if I can pull it up.
Okay, so sorry about that, but thank you. Mr. Elliott, go right ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a general question for many of us new. Our understanding was that we were well under budget from a revenue standpoint, and we're having to take significant cost reduction efforts in order to maintain the cash flow integrity of the organization. Given what appears to have been a pretty successful new membership drive and success during the convention, would it be fair to characterize the financial position of the organization as no longer being under stress?
For now, yes. I think that ideally there are a couple of staff positions that kind of disappeared over the course of the last year or maybe 2 years, and those need to be brought back. So I feel like for now we're in the clear, but I don't know about long term. Ms. Harless?
I guess I have a follow-up question to that. Under stress, that can be very subjective, and I would define it as our reserves being fully funded. So are our reserves fully funded? We can be solvent while not having our reserves fully funded. So that would be my question, if anyone happens to know.
Okay, so let's go to Mr. Nikela, and then we should hear from our executive director.
Yeah, just wanted to mention, I think a few things on kind of where we are financially, from my perspective at least, is we have a budget for the year. Obviously, we have a budget that can be plus or minus the average of the consumer price index averaged with the producer price index. So that's the maximum we can increase our budget. So for 2022, we have a nice budget put in place. Obviously, the question is, where are we at to be able to reach the expenditures we'd like to reach. So in other words, we have certain positions we budgeted for, which are currently not filled. We have certain things that we're not actually spending money on. So it's a matter of, where we're at now. And I'm sure Tyler can answer much more thoroughly the answer to this question, but where we are now, we're not at risk of not keeping the lights on, but it's a matter of, are we flourishing? And right now, the reality is, with what's going on in Ukraine, with what's going on with a lot of the giving that's going on nationwide is going to a lot of these conflicts and, the Red Cross and things like that. So people, obviously there's going to be a big push for political giving in a couple months with the midterms and election season, everything. That's where we make a lot of our money on the tail end of the year. But just somebody who's aware of the situation, it's not like we're at risk of going insolvent or anything like that. But if we want to spend the budget we want to spend, then there might have to be some adjustments we need to make up or down in certain areas to prioritize certain projects. I just want everybody to be kind of aware of that fact.
Thank you. I agree. Mr. Harris, please share your thoughts.
Yeah, so Ms. Harlow's actually raised the salient points that caused my hand to go up, but I have perhaps some numbers in those regards. So the most recent official end of month financial report prior to convention was end of month April. At end of month April, we were at a cash position of negative $34,005, so effectively $34K. That was relying on the line of credit is really where that $35K was. Our reserve target for 2022, the amount of cash that we target for the reserve account, based on the policy manual calculations for that, is $80,708. So we were about 14,713 short of a fully funded reserve as of the end of month April. So obviously all of convention has now happened and those resources are going to be in play in the conversation.
Okay.
I have a quick comment if it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. All of those numbers are correct. The only comment I'll make on the cash reserve, not casting a judgment one way or the other, but I believe that reserve target was just this year raised from 50,000 to 80,000, a level which we have never maintained. So I'm just throwing that out there as 50, and somebody can correct me if I have that number wrong, but I believe 50,000 was the historic cash reserve that the party targeted. And then on the ballot access issue, as of the last financials, it looked like we had 122,000 more dollars set aside for ballot access that had not been spoken for as of now. That of course,
I may be able to add a little bit more color to that.
Yes.
You're absolutely correct, Mr. Hagopian, in that 50,000 was the target up until the fall budget adjustments last year. So prior to call it August of 2021, $50,000 was the reserve target. That is going to be higher or lower depending on the budgeted level of staffing tends to be the variable that makes that go up and down. So if the intention of the committee is to continue to run short-staffed, then it's likely any budget that reflects that is going to have the effect of lowering that reserve target. If the committee wants to fully staff per the December budget, then that's where that reserve target of 80,000 comes from. So that's what makes that higher or lower in light of different budgets that the committee may adopt. There are other factors that roll into that, but that's the most variable of them.
That makes sense. I prefer that we have a higher reserve, but
And I will say that the reserve was for most of 2021 between 100 and 150,000. So
Okay.
to say that we've never reserved at 80, we've never had the requirement to reserve at 80. We have oftentimes maintained higher cash balances, as is a pretty good practice.
Okay. So let's go to Rich and then let's go to Dustin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I'm going to address the specific line item, and maybe Dustin or I think Mr. Redpath actually just came in, can confirm. Just so people know, we budgeted a total of 186,000 for ballot access petitioning at the December meeting. But I believe that within that budget, we had budgeted specific amounts for specific states. And although it's not binding, I believe those funds are spoken for at this point, or when I say spoken for, at least they're budgeted to specific states. So if we add Illinois and or Delaware, if they are not in that original budget, we may have to either pull from other states or add to that budget line. And like I said, I think ballot access, somebody from ballot access can maybe give us a better picture of what's exactly in that number.
Okay. Mr. Nana, you have something for us?
Yeah, I was just gonna let you know what the line item is. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like I have a file that includes the breakdown by state, but if I remember correctly, we did allocate some for Illinois specifically already. I don't remember what the amount was. I want to say it might have been 25,000,
Okay.
but I'm not 100% on that.
Okay, so really, and we're getting to my question, but and we may not have the answer, but actually, it looks like Bill Redpath is on the phone and he would have the answer. Can we unmute Mr. Redpath and hear from him?
Hello.
Hey there.
Hi. First of all, my recollection, I was not at the budget meeting. My recollection is different than, I'm sorry, Mr. Bowen. It is my understanding, it is my recollection that numbers were simply penciled in at the meeting for states, and that there then had to be a formal encumbrance by the EC or the LNC thereafter for the money to be spent. So there was nothing formal. Numbers were penciled in to get to the number. I thought the number was 201 that we got to, not 186, but regardless, it was 75. The number that was penciled in, quote unquote, for Illinois was 75,000. Our ask here is only 30.
Okay, great. So really what I was driving at in this meeting, and I'm sorry we haven't had a chance to connect it earlier. I wanted to call you before the meeting, but the Wisconsin thing threw me for a loop. I wanted to make sure that if we are going to give money here, that it wasn't already part of the ballot access money that we could just give from there. That was one of the reasons I wanted to have this chat. I didn't think that it was iffy on whether or not we should give the money. I wanted to make sure I was giving it from the right place.
Okay.
Ms. Harlos, and then let's do Mr. Nana. And then anybody who wants to clarify my question, please feel free.
I can, during the course of this meeting, look up the draft minutes for December. It's my recollection that there were certain amounts that were, as Mr. Redpath said, penciled in. Only the executive committee can encumber. So while the budget might say we're anticipating X amount for X state, that's not actually an encumbrance. Only the executive committee per our policy manual can encumber. So I'm concurring with Mr. Redpath. And during this little, while everyone else is talking, I will look up those minutes. They're not yet been approved, but the draft is reliable, and see what the pencil in amounts were.
Okay, great. Mr. Nana.
Yeah, what Mr. Redpath says is correct. The reason we have numbers for individual states is so that, when the report is given at that budget meeting by the ballot access committee, we can understand how we arrived at the number that we're asking for.
Got it.
And to address the difference between 186 and 201, 186 is the amount that was budgeted specifically for petitioning, and then 7,500 for legal efforts and 7,500 for lobbying. So altogether 201 for the line.
Okay, so help me make sure that I understand this right. There is or is not money in the ballot access account for Illinois.
There is
Okay.
money that we have not spent. Absolutely.
Okay. Would it be appropriate for the money to go from that account to Illinois at this time?
I would say would be appropriate, providing they have a good plan, and knowing Mr. Redpath, and since he's
Right.
there, I would assume the plan would be good.
I think so, and we'll hear from Todd, and then we'll hear from Mr. Seuss, and if Mr. Redpath has anything else to add, then we'll hear from that. I've reviewed everything that Mr. Seuss sent in. I feel perfectly comfortable with it, but we'll hear from him on the record just to be sure. But go ahead, Todd.
Yeah, and we can go to Mr. Seuss if we would like to. I thought I had heard enough, so I was going to make the motion. Steve has articulated everything behind the scenes to Angela and myself, and I am very comfortable with the plan as he's laid it out, so I was going to motion accordingly. But if you'd rather go to him first, we can do that.
Let's do it real quick, just so that everybody can get a sense of what we're voting on. So if we can have
Madam
Mr. Yes.
If I would second that motion, and I actually have language that could be used as a motion that I would be happy to put in chat to discuss. I believe I have all the figures correctly. If you'd like me to move that to chat, I'd be happy to do that.
Okay, so why don't we go ahead and hear the motion and the second, and then we'll hear from Mr. Seuss in discussion,
Okay.
just to keep things moving along. So Todd, if you want to, or who would like to make the motion? Todd or Rich, either of you is totally fine.
I've just put what my motion into the chat.
Okay.
And I believe the numbers are correct, but obviously we'll need to take a look at that while we're discussing.
All right.
But I'm happy with leaving it as Mr. Hagopian's motion, and I'm happy to second.
Okay. I'm looking in the chat, trying to find it.
Let me make sure I send it. Hold on.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not in chat. And Madam Chair, Mr. Redpath had said in chat that the ballot access committee had recommended 75,000 for
Right.
Illinois, and that's also what I have found in the minutes as well.
Okay, great. Okay, so we've got the language here. Rich, if you don't mind reading it.
No, I don't mind at all. Move that the LNC disperse funds in the amount of $15,000 to the Libertarian Party of Illinois for ballot access use when 12,500 signatures have been secured, and an additional $15,000 upon reaching 28,750 signatures secured, parentheses, 115% of the minimum threshold.
Second.
Okay, fantastic. So now let's get Mr. Seuss unmuted to give us a brief update.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I am actually going to defer my time to Bill because Bill has the signatures in hand, so he has the most recent update. But everything from my email is still correct, except we now have 14,000 plus signatures in hand, and Bill has secured extra paid petitioners as well. So Bill, if you want to briefly go through an update in the interest of time, and then we'll see what we can do here.
Yes, thank you, Steve. I am the ballot access director of the Libertarian Party of Illinois, and have been doing ballot access work for the Libertarian Party in one way or another since 1988, and I've been involved nationally since 1990. First of all, just to let people know, we have to petition here for our statewide candidates because we did not get 5% of the vote in a statewide election in 2020. Therefore, we were kicked off the ballot. We were on the ballot in 2020. One of the fortunate things about the COVID situation in 2020 was that we initiated litigation, the upshot of which was that our statewide candidates got put on the ballot, having to gather 0 signatures in a litigation that went to U.S. District Court in Chicago. So we were on the ballot by U.S. District Court judge order. We did not get 5% for either president or U.S. Senate. Therefore, we were kicked off the ballot, have to do 25,000 valid signatures to get our statewide slate back on the ballot. And we do have a full statewide slate. The petition drive started on April 13. Therefore, today is day 58 of 89 in the petition drive. On the 90th day, we have to turn signatures in. That is the 11th of July. The last day of petitioning will be Sunday, July 10. Then we have to go through this signature assembly process that night and get ready to turn in signatures to the State Board of Elections in Springfield on Monday, July 11. So we need 25,000 valid signatures. There is no distribution requirement. It's just 25,000 valid signatures from anywhere in the state. Right now, we are at about, I'm going to say 14,000. We're at least 14,600 and maybe beyond that. 8,500 of that has come from volunteers, 6,100 paid petitioners. So you might say, okay, how many signatures do you need total? We need 25,000 valid, 35,000 valid might get it done. I want to go beyond that, but we are doing test validation. The paid petitioning firm that is probably going to run lowest. There is an Illinois organization that is recruiting Illinois people to do the petitioning. They've done about 4,800 or delivered about 4,800 signatures so far. Their validity rate is running about 68%. My validity rate, I've so far done 3,400, almost exactly, give or take a very few signatures, 3,400 volunteer signatures. I'm certainly going to go over 5,000 volunteer. I may hit 6,000 volunteer signatures in this drive. My validity rate is right now running in the high 70s, a high 70% area. And I think it's going to be that way for most of our volunteers. So I want to turn in more than 35,000, but even if it were only 35,000 signatures, it could very well be enough at 5/7 validity to get the job done and put us on the ballot. And you would also say, well, okay, that means we got to do about 20,000 signatures over the next 30 some days. I think this is including today, we have 32 days of petitioning left, but we have paid petitioners coming in. The local firm is going to continue. Bob Lynch is here and is in Champaign, based in Champaign and working the central part of the state. Sanford Pankin is flying in for a month. I don't know if anybody out there knows Sanford Pankin. He's a former Virginian, now lives in Las Vegas, but Sanford is a great petitioner, prodigious volume. I penciled him conservatively. He's going to stay for a whole month to the end of the drive, 2,500 signatures. Sam Erickson, I penciled in at 2,000 signatures. Arenza Thigpen will be coming at some point here to Illinois to help out. 2,000 signatures total. Bob Lynch should be able to do 3,000 signatures total. And if needed, Daryl Bonner and his mother may come to work on this drive as well. So if we keep up the volunteer effort, I really do think the volunteer effort can hit a total of, we could do about another 9,000 volunteer. I think that more and more people are getting out. And I probably don't have reports from everyone, but I really think we have the capability to hit about 17,500 volunteer signatures, which really is an excellent effort. When you compare to some other states' performance, 17,500 volunteer is a good job. And then the paid signatures, ultimately, I think we can hit at least 18,000, and I want to take it beyond that. But I really do think we are on track to get to at least 35,000 gross signatures. We're doing test validity. The validity tests so far, the validity results point to that happening. And I think we've got enough paid petitioners, and I think we've got a serious enough volunteer effort that it would be successful. If we do, and here's the other thing, then we have to think about ballot access, retaining ballot access. We have an interesting situation this year. We have a full statewide slate. I am the US Senate candidate. We have a governor ticket. We have also candidates for Attorney General. Dan Robin, I saw, was on this. Dan Robin is on this call. He's the Attorney General candidate. And we also have candidates for Secretary of State, Treasurer, and Comptroller. I want to go to the Secretary of State candidate for a moment. You may have read about this in the email. There is an outgoing Secretary of State who is a man, a Democrat, who has been Secretary of State for the past 24 years and is very well liked in this state. But he's 87, I think. He's in his 80s for sure, and he has decided to retire. He is not seeking re-election. His name is Jesse White. It just so happens that the Libertarian Party of Illinois' candidate for Secretary of State this year is a Libertarian Party member in Illinois whose name is Jesse White. And we are optimistic that there will be enough name ID, so to speak, there that I think frankly we stand a very good chance of getting over 5% for Secretary of State, which will at least then give us a situation where in 2024, where we won't have to do a 25,000 signature petition for the presidential ticket to get on. There is no US Senate race in this state in 2024, but obviously there's the presidential ticket. And it would then, correct me if I'm wrong, Steve, it would take only 5,000 signatures to get our presidential ticket on the ballot, which I would be ashamed if we couldn't do that. Volunteer.
That's correct, Bill. And actually, the ballot access is maintained for 4 years in Illinois. So we would also be free and clear for the 2026 cycle for our governor candidate as well. And every single time we hit that 5% mark, that clock resets and we get another 4 years.
Right. So we would then be able to run another, I would think we could then run another statewide slate in 2026 in another attempt to retain the 5% and maintain ballot access going forward. But I think this is really, I mean, we've got good candidates here, but I think the Jesse White situation is a unique opportunity for us to earn the 5% and retain ballot status.
Okay, I have a quick question. That all sounds fantastic. What do you estimate the validity rate will be on the paid signature gatherer section?
So far, well, there's a paid firm. There's a firm, I'll call it. The name of it is Hani Consulting. And I've known people associated with that for years. That's running at 68%. But those aren't Bob Lynch's validity right now. I don't, Russ Clark just got Bob's first signatures yesterday. I asked him to do a validity check, and I'd have to check my text messages to see if he's texted me yet. But I will say this much. Bob is an experienced petitioner. He knows what he's doing. I've known Bob for over 20 years. I've been working with him within the Libertarian Party for over 20 years. I would be very surprised, knowing Bob's history, if his validity were under 70%.
Okay, great. Yeah, I just want to make sure you get the support you need.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, any further discussion on this motion? Oh, actually, I have a question. Are the timelines okay for the fund distributed? Like, this motion will pass. I'm pretty confident today. You'll get a payout ASAP. And then are you okay to wait until the language that Rich Bowen specified in his motion to get the second chunk of it?
Yes, to me,
Okay.
That's not a problem at all.
Great. Okay. Okay, any other further questions or discussion on this? Otherwise, we're going to go to a vote. Okay, if there's nothing else, let's go to a vote. Madam Secretary, if you don't mind doing a roll call vote, I would appreciate it.
Yep, no problem. Just 1 second. Let me go to
Yep.
my template. Mr. Bowen,
Yes.
Mr. Elliott,
Yes.
Mr. Hagopian,
Yes.
I will vote yes. Mr. Nikala,
Yes.
Mr. Smith.
Yes.
Okay, Madam Chair, it is 6 yes, 0 no, 0 express abstention so far.
Just, this is Bill Rudd, but just a question here. These funds will be going to the Libertarian Party of Illinois, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
My apologies. I was having a Wayne shut the door moment
Yeah.
with a noisy cat. Okay, well, the motion passes. So that's fantastic.
Okay, thank you very much.
You are
We
welcome.
will expend it carefully.
Thank you. Please be in touch if there's anything else we could do for you, if you need litigation support, if anything weird comes up, we'll make sure it gets handled.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Nana. Oh, you're muted.
There we go. So without looking at the full roster, I know we've lost a decent amount of members from Ballot Access. Just so it's on everybody's radar, we might want to populate the committee a little bit since our term runs through the first quarter of next year. I assume there will be some more work to do.
I've been watching that, and I do have at least one appointment that I intend to make in less than a week. But I want to chat with you offline about the other one.
Sounds good.
Okay,
Yes,
cool.
as far as I can see, there are 3 vacancies.
So let's jump to the next agenda item, which is New Hampshire. Is Mr. Ford on the call?
I show him also the chair of New Hampshire, Nolan.
I'm here, Madam
Pelley
Chair.
here. Is here as well.
Okay, so I want to hear from Pat because he's the one that brought it to us as the region rep. And then we're definitely going to call on Nolan and maybe another member of New Hampshire. But Pat, if you don't mind, please take it away. Give us your New Hampshire pitch.
Well, I'm thrilled to talk about New Hampshire. New Hampshire, as you can tell by the numbers submitted, has had a very aggressive start towards self-sufficiency in ballot access. On the other hand, they are facing certain existential challenges, one of which, of course, is that it's been discussed internally about a potential competitive Libertarian candidate. You've also just got the numbers necessary to get into office. So I think this is a reasonable ask because it reflects the sweat equity that the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire has. There is an aggressive campaign going on at the gubernatorial level, an aggressive campaign going on at the United States Senate level that I think we're all familiar with. And I think that this will send a powerful signal. I also know that there's people in other affiliates that are looking to go up there. I'll be up there myself, engaging in petitioning as well. So all in all, I think it's a great message to send to New Hampshire, particularly given the aggressive outreach they're also taking with the Free State Project. So this will just be, I think, will get them over the top.
Okay. You are hiring petitioners. Do you have pretty good confidence in the petitioners that you've hired?
I'm gonna leave the specifics of that, but after meeting with Nolan extensively on this,
Okay.
I am completely comfortable in the approach that the management team at LPNH is taking with regard to who they're reaching out to.
Okay, so if everybody's all right with it, I'd like to hear from Nolan and have him talk a little bit about the campaign, specifically paid signature gatherers, how serious the campaigns are, so on and so forth.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on tonight and at least hearing our request. I want to say thank you for that. First of all, I want to say our campaigns are very serious. Our goal is to get ballot access, always has been. And I mean, that's the goal of a political party, is to be on the ballot. As you know, I mean, New Hampshire has been embroiled in several things, limiting our focus, but going back to the prior year, but moving forward, we are going full steam ahead. We are facing other challenges. We do have a member who is running other candidates, who is using outside of the state phone banking to And I don't know what lists they're coming from. I have been contacted by several members that they're being contacted about other libertarian candidates within the state. So we, as you all know, ballot access is a daunting task in itself. We have been doing volunteer petitioning, which is probably about half of the petitions we have currently. We have hired paid petitioners who have a proven track record in the past. We have actually put out more money to get some more signatures from them. We really just want to solidify our ballot access so we can pivot and deal with the other issues that are coming up in our state, because we're probably going to have to do the same thing, phone banking, other campaigning issues. And it would be really beneficial to get this so we can solidify our ballot access and turn our attention to the items that really need our attention at this time.
Okay.
In regards to the actual ballot access, if you will allow me, I would love to turn over to Justin, who his boots have been on the ground. He's intimately involved with this,
Okay.
and he would shed a lot of light on this situation.
I would like to hear from Justin. I have a couple questions. Dustin, Nana, I see your hand raised, so I'll be the first to call in. I'll call on you first after Justin speaks. So let's get Justin O'Donnell unmuted if he's not already.
I'm here. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
So I think everybody's been familiar with the Jeremy Kaufman campaign for U.S. Senate here. I am the campaign manager and have been directly managing the petition drive to this point across the state for our slate of candidates, which includes Karlin Boroshenko for governor, because we can petition as a single slate. We do not have to do it by candidate here in New Hampshire. So that's one benefit we do have. Of note, we have been petitioning. We started off with a mostly volunteer effort and to get started early, and then there is one paid petitioning team that we have that is doing paid petitions, and they're incredibly reliable. We use them in 2020, we used them in 2016. It's the same team that's been helping for a very long time here in New Hampshire. They can consistently get 1,000 signatures a week at $5 a signature without question, without problem, and they usually average between a 70 and a 75% validity rate. Our volunteer validity rate is usually between 60 and 70% historically. We, at this point, have about 2,300 petitions in hand. I think confirmed number is a little over 2,200. We need 1,500 per each of our congressional districts valid, and our validation process can't actually take place till later in the summer. We cannot do any pre-validation since we do not have access to the voter registration logs here in New Hampshire. We must turn in the petitions to the towns themselves to validate before we do a lump sum turn in. We only get one shot at our turn in on August 10th.
August 10th. Okay.
So now the $5,000 being asked for would be to pay that petition team for another 1,000 signatures, lock it in, guarantee it gets done. In full disclosure, I have confidence that we will do it and hire them either way. We have had successful fundraising early on with the campaign. I would prefer to kind of save our campaign funds for campaigning, since we are facing not just a run against Republicans and Democrats, but now other libertarians as well that will effectively split our vote that we have to campaign against in the state to try and achieve ballot access moving forward. I think this is a very unique opportunity in New Hampshire and for the Libertarian Party nationally, because we have not had ballot access in New Hampshire during a presidential year since 1992. And with ballot access in a presidential year comes access to the media circus that is the first in the nation primary, where you do get coverage. You are required to participate in something I think we could incentivize our candidates in 2024 to take part of, take advantage of for the media exposure, as well as we would be able to get a list of every New Hampshire voter who votes in the Libertarian primary afterwards,
Okay.
Which would be huge for recruiting moving forward and for the party moving forward. But like I said, in full disclosure, we can afford this without the LNC's help. The LNC's help will allow us to keep the funds that we have raised dedicated towards the actual campaign and making
You're starting to
sure
break
we
up.
hit the 4% number to get that ballot for next year.
Okay. I'm gonna go to Dustin
Sorry.
Nana. That's okay.
That's about it. If anybody has any questions.
Yep, stick around for a second because I think three people have got questions and I have a couple questions. Mr. Nana, go ahead.
I think I heard, just want to confirm there's 2,300 signatures in hand. And I know they have 2 congressional districts in New Hampshire. They need 1,500 from each. Do you know approximately the breakdown in each congressional district currently, or is that something you don't know as of this time? Would be
Yeah,
my first question.
We do have 1,300 and change in the first congressional district and 800 and change in the second congressional district already. And well, when I said we can't pre-validate, we are being very judicious in what we are counting. We have thrown out about 100 or so petitions so far ourselves, just legibility issues. If I can't read it, a city clerk can't read it and they can't validate it. And so we are trying to maximize our validity or what we're going to turn in and not artificially inflate our numbers for morale purposes. We're trying to get a realistic number moving forward. So we are throwing out our own petitions for things like having misspellings of city names or being illegible, the things that we think wouldn't get validated.
Sure, that's good practice, and I'm glad to hear that. And then the ask is for $5,000, and you need 5% to maintain if you get it. If you get on,
we need 4% this time. In my honest assessment, the legislature will raise it to 5% if we do get it, because they have, every time we've gotten ballot access in the past, added another percent to the total moving forward. But at this point, it's still 4%.
Sure. All right. I appreciate that insight.
Okay, let's go to Ms. Harless and then we'll go to Rich Bowen.
Several things. First, just in general, it has to do with Illinois and New Hampshire. Would a national call for volunteers who happen to just want to travel to either of those states and help petitioning, would that be helpful, or would that be one of the situations where sometimes having volunteers, the training curve can hamper on short timelines? So if someone could just stick that in chat, I'd be really interested, because I would like us to do whatever we can if you need volunteers to come out there. The second thing, and I want to say this delicately, and I certainly don't want to name any names because I don't think that should happen in open session, but it concerns me that there's competing libertarian candidates. So I have a question to New Hampshire as to whether, and I apologize if I should know this already, whether anyone can use the libertarian ballot line or whether it's just the candidates nominated in convention. And also, there's 2 other points on this. One, even though when I hear a state party say they can afford it on their own, I usually get inclined to vote no. But considering this very unusual circumstance where unfortunately we have party members working against party members, I would be inclined to say yes, because I think the national party has to support the state parties. We just have to. And if we're facing this quite unusual situation, I think we have to support it. And secondly, I would encourage either the executive committee or the LNC to have some kind of meeting in executive session, again, because I don't believe in naming names in open session, to talk about how we're going to deal with this, because I don't think we could ignore this situation. I find it really, really unfortunate. And I want to see us strongly backing the state affiliate and the state members who have nominated candidates in their convention. Thank you.
To answer your question, Ms. Harlow, about who can use the ballot line in New Hampshire, when we do not have party status, anybody who collects the number of petitions can be listed under whatever designation they fill in on their form. The state doesn't care, and the state has actually taken the Libertarian Party to court for challenging it in the past and won. My record, I believe, was LPNH versus Secretary of State in New Hampshire in 2008, where Libertarian Party of New Hampshire members were very upset about Bob Barr being the presidential nominee and petitioned George Phillies to run against him, and had 2 presidential tickets in New Hampshire at the time. So that's been settled in case law here in New Hampshire that we cannot do anything about it. And when we do have party status, we actually have a primary to determine who gets on the ballot.
Second thing, Nolan, I think, wants to speak and he's muted. So I just wanted to bring attention to that.
Okay, let's hear from Nolan and then let's hear from Mr. Nikela.
It's okay. I was going to answer that question. Justin answered it. I was just I was on mute, so I couldn't answer it.
All good. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, Stephen Nikela.
Thank you, Ms. Chair. So, just a few questions, just so I'm crystal clear on a few things. So I hear obviously there's a primary. I understand the need for primaries at times. I also understand Florida has similar ballot law. Anybody can register to run as a Libertarian. And we had a situation where we had a primary in 2015 for State House. So I just want to make a few things clear here. So there is a primary. Obviously, you guys are asking for money to support one of those primary candidates. Is that my understanding, or is there?
No, that's incorrect. So there's no primary.
Okay.
We nominate. We do not have ballot access, so we do not have access to a primary election. We nominated our candidates in convention, and we are petitioning to place them on the ballot on the general election. At the same time, the Libertarian Policy Institute has decided to fundraise on their own from out of state and hire out of state phone bankers to call our membership list. We don't know how they got our membership list, but they've been contacting our members, asking them to quit the party and join their slate, and they're launching their own petition campaign for a separate slate of candidates using the name Libertarian in the general election.
So
none of those candidates that they're running are actually members of LPNH.
I see. Okay, that makes things more clear. And then on the general ballot, will your candidate have Libertarian Party of New Hampshire or LPNH, or what's the designation between the two?
I just want to make a correction on that. I believe Kelly Halverson is a member of LPNH. She joined in December. She's one of the candidates. Okay. The other ones are not. I just wanted to clarify that.
She was not a member of our convention or the nomination. She did not seek the nomination.
Correct. She did not seek nomination at convention, but she is technically a member of LPNH at the current moment.
I see.
To your party designation on the ballot, the New Hampshire has a party column ballot, so each race is a separate line on the ballot, but they're in columns. Republicans get one column. Democrats get another column. Then there's another column listed as other. Our candidates will be listed in the other column and will have Libertarian under their name. And any candidate who collects the requisite 3,000 valid petitions to get on the ballot will be on that in that column with whatever they designate under their name, be it Libertarian, be it Waffle House candidate, whatever. The Secretary of State doesn't care.
Okay.
Understood.
We have two people with their hands raised. I want to go to Dustin first. Todd, do you have an additional 10 minutes or are you boarding a plane right now?
I'm about to jump on the plane.
Okay. I'm sorry, Dustin. I'm going to pull Todd ahead just because we're about to lose him. Go ahead, Todd.
All right. I'll try and take just 30 seconds on this. I am very concerned about spending ballot access money in a scenario where another group benefits from the money. And more importantly, another group will split the vote potentially on key races. I'll let you guys make the call because I'm going to jump on a plane. But one thing I might want to hear more detail on, or you guys should hear more detail on, is how many races are there and how many races do we anticipate the other group will be competitive in?
Okay.
Basically, is there a race that you guys can focus on that won't have Libertarian competition? 4%. But that's all I wanted to say. It's not a lot of money, so if you guys vote the other way, I'm not going to cry about it. But I want to make those points.
Okay.
Can I answer that?
Yes, please do.
There's two races that will give us ballot access, and those are the two that are being that's governor and U.S. Senate, and those are the two that are being contested, basically.
Are they running any other candidates besides those two? Are they running them against you?
That's to be determined. We've had to, we've been finding this out almost secondhand. We've been going
Right.
through the logs and trying to, find that information out. We were aware of one for quite some time, and that was for governor. The concern was brought up previously by me through reps, because one of the people that was working at National and was actually a member of that team while working on the candidate support committee. So this was a concern prior to, this. So, I mean, I don't know if those lists were acquired that way. I have no idea, but like this, we knew about one and now we're finding about others, and we constantly have to review and see who's filing, so we even know who's coming up. But
Okay.
those two races are the ones that would give us ballot access, being governor and US Senate.
Okay, so let's go to Dustin Nana, and then we'll go to Karen Harless and Stephen Nikhil.
There are a couple of things that I would like to say, but I don't particularly want to say them in open session. We're getting dangerously close to starting to talk about political strategy here, when we might want to consider having a short executive session with the board and anybody from New Hampshire that we want to invite to discuss some of this stuff.
Okay, do we want to do that during this call, or is that something that could come up later? Because you're not the only person who's raised this concern. Like, do we need to do it before?
I think it might be wise to do it before we actually disperse funds.
Okay,
I second such a motion to go into executive session with the LP New Hampshire folks and ballot access folks in.
Okay, well, it hasn't been made yet because Dustin's not on the EC.
Oh, okay.
Let me go to Karen Ann and then let's revisit it.
Okay, I am going to end up making that motion, Stephen, and it will be for the end of this meeting. So, because there's a Missouri request as well.
I think that request is off.
They wrote me back and
Okay.
I put it back onto the list. Jeff Coleman is here, and I believe Bill Slants is here, and they wanted to be put back on. And I
Okay.
believe they're both here.
That's
So
fine.
at the end of my comment, I am going to make such a motion. So Stephen, you will be able to second it. I do want to just say something very respectfully in contrary to what Mr. Hagopian said. The fact that some of our own are potentially causing harm to one of our state parties, to me, means we have to support it. I'm just contrary. I understand people of good faith can disagree. Just putting my cards on the table with that, I will always support state parties. If we can't support a state party, not suggesting anything like this, but that's when you disaffiliate. If you're affiliated with them, we're in a marriage and you defend your spouse. I mean, that's the only kind of way I can describe that. But I am going to make a motion that at the end of all the currently slated business and after opportunity for public comment, that we move into a brief executive session to discuss this competing candidate situation. And including all EC members, all LNC members, and staff and members of the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire.
Okay.
Second.
Was that Stephen?
Second.
That was Brian. Okay, great. Brian Elliott seconded. Okay. Any discussion on that motion? Any objections? Would we be okay if I just call it hearing no objections?
Yes, ma'am, I believe so.
Motion, okay, hearing no objections, the motion is passed. So we will do that. Before we go into executive session, and on the last note of this, and then I think we should move on to Missouri, I want to address a couple of elephants in the room, and I'll do it publicly because I think that's reasonable. I'm aware that not everyone in the National Libertarian Party is crazy about the Jeremy Kauffman campaign or about Carlin's campaign. They are our candidates. They are the affiliate that we recognize. They're working very hard. Justin O'Donnell has been in the party a long time. He's working very hard. I think that his track record speaks for itself. And I think that we need to support them. And if you want to see campaigns that you like, generally speaking, I think that you would do much better to lean in and wrap your arms around the people who need that support and draw them closer to you. And that's the best way to influence people, not to push them away or to run against them. So I just want to get that out there because there's controversy, and I think that it's appropriate for people to know where I personally stand. That's all I got to say about that. Ms. Harless, do you have another thing, and then we can move to the next item?
I actually do, though. Well, I guess we'll just see where the votes go. My support for the $5,000 encumbrance to New Hampshire is not dependent upon the executive committee discussion. I think that's completely separate. I would like to, before we move to Missouri, encumber that $5,000. And I don't know. I would like Mr. Ford, if he agrees, to give me wording for a motion, since he's the representative that has whatever parameters that they would find acceptable. But I would like to make that motion before we move on to Missouri, because again, this executive committee session to me doesn't affect my vote in any way. And I would like to, deadlines are coming up. I don't want to have to call another meeting for this encumbrance.
Okay.
So Mr. Ford, do you have language? Otherwise, I'm just going to throw out something very basic.
Karen Ann, I think it's best to let's keep this basic.
Okay.
The amount of money is relatively modest, and I think we should just move to encumber $5,000 to the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire for ballot access, and release the funds to them so that without going into yet another subject, we don't get into the crazy dance the last LNC got with respect to another Northeastern affiliate. So I would just like to I would like to motion to move the money to be encumbered immediately to the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire.
Okay, so as a, I'll make that motion then, and I'll just put it formally on the record. I move to encumber $5,000 for New Hampshire ballot access to be released immediately to the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire.
Thank you.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
A little confused. I thought we were going into executive session first.
I agree. But
No,
go ahead.
I had moved to go into executive session to talk about the competing candidate situation. I did not make executive session at all dependent upon ballot access encumbrance. I view those two issues as completely separate.
Thought we just had a motion, a second, and a vote, and there was no objection to go in. So that would be the orders.
No, my motion was after public comment. So we'd talk about Missouri, we'd go into public comment, and we'd ended this meeting.
Okay.
Okay. So here's how I understood it, which doesn't actually matter. What matters is the language. The way I understood it was that members of the EC thought we were going, and Dustin and Anna thought we were going to go into executive session first and then vote. But the motion came out the way it came out. And Karen Ann Harless knew exactly what she was saying, and then no one objected.
And it is in the live notes the way I said it.
So yeah, and Dustin caught it too. So I don't want anyone to feel tricked. I heard that Ms. Harlow's motion was not exactly what Dustin was suggesting, but you know, I'm just trying to facilitate this, and I'm just trying to let it go as it goes and call it how it happens.
If anyone in the executive committee feels misled as somebody on the obviously winning side, I would move to reconsider if people want to change their vote. I'm not trying to trick people. If I didn't say it as clearly as possible, I'll take full responsibility for that. So if any EC member would like me to move to reconsider, I'd gladly do that. I'm not looking to get a gotcha.
It's okay. I'll just say in open session, there's nothing I had to, there's a few questions that I have that I'll answer. I'll ask during this motion, during this discussion that shouldn't, I don't
Got
think.
it. Okay, so let me offer this solution. which is not something I want to see happen, but I'm going to let you all know. We're going to go forward with this motion. And then later we're going to go into executive session. If something crazy comes up and you guys are uncomfortable with it, then someone can move to reconsider this motion. I hope that doesn't happen. But it is an option, and it is a way that we can kind of proceed without too many hiccups. Brian Elliott?
Just so I'm clear, I apologize for my lack of understanding. So what we're going to be voting on next is going to be a motion that's not yet been presented to grant the $5,000 request to New Hampshire, and then we have public comment, and then we go into executive session. Am I understanding the process properly?
May I answer, Madam Chair?
Sure, go right ahead.
I am sorry to cause all this confusion. So I moved at the very end of this meeting, we go into executive session just to discuss political strategy with regards to this competing candidate situation. To me, that had absolutely nothing to do with the ballot encumbrance question. That passed without objection. I then subsequently moved to encumber $5,000 through New Hampshire ballot access to be released immediately to the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire. Once that was disposed of, I understood we were going to move to talk about Missouri, public comment, and then go into executive session.
So we're going to vote on the 5K.
That's the motion on the table.
Okay, but
And
that was my question. Okay.
Yeah, and that's the only thing. Okay,
Okay.
so
I will second that motion since I
Okay.
have the floor.
Okay, so it looks like everybody's hands are down. Any further discussion? Okay, let's go to a vote, and I think that we should do a roll call vote.
Yep, just give me 1 sec to set up the template.
Yep, take your
Okay,
time.
Mr. Bowen,
Yes.
Mr. Elliott,
Yes.
Mr. Hagopian is not. Are you here, Mr. Hagopian? Okay, he is absent. I am going to vote yes. Mr. Nikela,
I will vote yes.
Mr. Smith,
Let me check to see if he's still on the call. I don't see Josh Smith on the call right now. Oh, no, there he is. Paging Joshua Smith, paging Joshua Smith.
Hey, sorry. I just want to apologize. I'm very, very sick. Yes.
okay. Madam Chair, we have 5 yes votes.
Okay, great. I don't think you need my vote.
We do not.
Okay, so let's call it and the motion passes. Thank you, guys. Okay, so if the New Hampshire crew can stick around till the end, I'd appreciate it. Just do your best. I know everybody's got busy lives and a lot of stuff going on. So let's go to the next agenda item, which was other requests, and Missouri definitely falls under that scope. So I'm not sure who the best person to discuss that would be. Maybe Ms. Harless, I'll let you open and then you can point to who we should chat with.
We had heard from Jeff Coleman at the post-convention meeting about issues with redistricting. And then I had since been in touch with the chair, Bill Slants, and he had asked for both either himself or Jeff Coleman to have an opportunity to address the LNC during this meeting. So I have both of them listed as present, though I think Mr. Slants is using Steve Cease's one of his 2 names on here. So if one of them would want to raise their hand and let us know.
We are looking for that hand raise function. You go down to the bottom of the screen. There's a little smiley face that says reactions. Click that. And then there's a button that says, oh, there we go. There's Jeff Coleman. We'll get you unmuted. Just 1 second.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I did receive a message from our state chair, Bill Slants, that he has a prior conflict and he is not going to be able to attend this meeting.
Okay.
But I'm happy to handle any questions, take any questions, or give any information that would be appropriate about Missouri's request.
Yeah, can you just share with us in your own words what Missouri's request is?
Well, would it be helpful for me to kind of give maybe an abbreviated version of the statement I made at the May 29th meeting?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's fine.
Okay. Several months ago, LP Missouri approved up to $5,000 towards legal expenses of challenging Missouri's Amendment 3. This constitutional amendment shifted the state's primary redistricting authority from a nonpartisan demographer, and nonpartisan obviously meaning that anyone of any political stripe would be able to participate, shifted to a pair of explicitly bipartisan commissions, which precludes direct libertarian participation in Missouri redistricting. It also abolished redistricting requirements for partisan fairness and competitiveness. We're in talks with an election law specialist in Missouri who is interested in mounting this challenge for LP Missouri. He has identified numerous legal vulnerabilities of Amendment 3. I'm happy to go into what those vulnerabilities are if anybody is interested. But he has also agreed to a discounted hourly rate and a cap of $15,000 in legal fees to achieve a court ruling. So in order to cover the costs of litigating, LP Missouri is renewing our request for a funding commitment not to exceed $10,000. And from the LNC, and every LP dollar would be matched by 50 cents from LP Missouri. Again, that $5,000 has already been approved by LP Missouri, contingent upon receiving another commitment of up to $10,000 or not to exceed $10,000. As I mentioned, the $15,000 would be the ceiling, and if the case does not require $15,000 in legal fees, then the difference would not be used. So whatever legal expenses are required would be split in a 2-to-1 ratio between the LP and LP Missouri.
Okay, I am curious to hear about the legal vulnerabilities.
Okay. The one that would be most relevant to our party is that we believe that this constitutional amendment violates the First and 14th Amendment rights of Missourians seeking to perform an essential government function who are not affiliated with the two most dominant political parties, because it does explicitly allow only party members of the two parties that received the most number of votes in the prior gubernatorial election.
Okay.
Another vulnerability of Amendment 3 is that it unlawfully removes federal court jurisdiction from any redistricting challenges. The attorney has assured us that this is something that is very ripe for challenging, and the idea that a state could bar federal court jurisdiction from any kind of a challenge is
Okay. Slow down. I'm taking notes. So it unlawfully removes federal court jurisdiction from what?
From any challenge to the outcome of a redistricting procedure, or any part of the redistricting.
And where does it send that to? Is it an administrative court?
No, it would be. It requires that any challenges can only be heard in Cole County Circuit Court, and Cole County, Missouri is the county that the state capital is located in.
Okay, so it can only be heard in Cole County Circuit Court. So then what happens when there is inevitably an appeal?
You're saying in the event that it is, that the
Yeah.
challenge is in Cole County Circuit Court, then it could be appealed to the Court of Appeals of Missouri, and then beyond that to the Missouri Supreme Court.
Okay, and has your volunteer attorney, the guy who stepped up, has he done any legal research and showed you what the courts have stated about anything similar in the past? Is there any sort of precedent that's related to this?
We haven't drilled down into that question specifically, but he has indicated to me that of the various vulnerabilities that he has identified, he believes that that one right there is the strongest element of our case that we can bring.
Sounds really strong to me. And I think it's really interesting. And I think the cost is pretty cheap. So what's your timeline?
Timeline is hard to say. I'm going to refer to the information that was provided to me from the attorney here. He said that the issues are largely legal, meaning that developing a factual record won't be necessary. Because of this, the trial court and any appellate courts will be able to resolve the issues based on a written record, i.e. without a trial.
Yeah. So, okay. So what I'm thinking is, do you have any candidates or anybody who's going to be impacted within the next 2 years who is going to get screwed over by this? Have you identified anyone yet?
Screwed over in terms of if the state vindictively retaliates?
By all of this redistricting procedures.
Yeah, well, the redistricting itself has already concluded. That took place earlier this year on the state districts, the state house districts and the state senate districts. Those maps were completed just a couple of months ago, and then the congressional districts were just completed a few weeks ago. So all of the maps are now in place.
Okay.
But there are certainly talks because of the way that the congressional maps were done. There are talks of potential lawsuits unrelated to this lawsuit that we're discussing, and but lawsuits potentially brought by other parties that may challenge that congressional map.
And their lawsuits, if they hit first, could end up with some precedent that is not actually helpful to us.
Well, those lawsuits would be on the congressional maps, and the lawsuit that we would be mounting would be specifically on state redistricting to exclude the congressional.
I'm thinking 2 or 3 steps ahead and how a court ruling could potentially impact you if we don't get to work on this.
I see.
Because sometimes the court will say something on someone else's issue, and then you're like, oh, geez, I didn't realize that's actually going to make my argument even harder. And so there's additional hurdles for you to overcome.
Yep,
is what I'm trying to say.
that is very true.
Okay, so I'm sorry, I took a lot of time because I'm very interested in this. I see Mr. Nana has his hand up, and so does Ms. Harlos.
Are you calling on me first?
Yes, I am.
Okay. I guess this is a comment more so than a question. It sounds like it might be a cost-effective thing for us to invest in, but it also doesn't sound like it's related to ballot access. So I would request that if we do encumber funds for this at some point, that it does not come out of our ballot access legal fund, which is actually capped at 7,500 right now. This doesn't sound like it relates in any way to ballot access. While it may be a cost-effective good ask for the party as a whole, I don't think, unless I'm missing something, this ties into ballot access at all.
Okay.
I agree with that assessment.
Ms. Harlos?
Yes, I agree with that assessment at all. I think this is just, it's going into more legal issues, which is also something that the EC has to deal with. So, though it might be slightly, more than slightly off topic for this meeting, I think it was a good intro, though I don't think we can do anything this particular meeting. I'd really suggest we get Oliver Hall's opinion on it. I can say and unfortunately, to my shame, I hadn't paid as much attention in Colorado as I should have. But we had something similar in Colorado with, it wasn't bipartisan, it was nonpartisan. So if it was Republicans, Democrats, and then nonpartisan. So all of the third parties were excluded. And I can't remember whether it was from a redistricting commission, but it was something very similar. And I think we chose not to fight it. But it's my impression that laws like this can be challenged at any time. If they're unconstitutional, they're unconstitutional. It's kind of like a continuing breach of the bylaws, which I happen to be kind of familiar with. So a win in Missouri might actually help Colorado as well. And there could be other states that would be impacted by this. Now, my understanding might be incorrect about the fact that they can be challenged at any time, but I think that's something we need to explore. And this just brings up something for the LNC to consider in the future. We have the Ballot Access Committee, and Dustin, very eloquently stated, this really isn't directly a ballot access issue, but going to so many state party conventions, I've noticed they've had legal issue committees. And I think that's something we might want to explore. We have a lot of attorneys in this party that would be glad to donate their time. And we have a lot of paralegals as well, 2 of them right here, that would be interested. And I think that's a policy manual committee we might want to consider that would handle issues like this. And that was pretty much it. It was just comments.
Okay.
I'd like to respond real quickly to part of what Ms. Harlos just said, as far as the timeliness or the ability to take this type of challenge on regardless of the timing. That is one of the conversations that we've had with the attorney, and he has indicated that one thing that really works in our favor in Missouri on this particular challenge is that the constitutional amendment that we would be targeting is a very fresh amendment. This amendment only occurred about a year and a half ago, and had this been an amendment that had been in place for the past decade without receiving any challenges during that decade, that would make it that much harder for us to bring a challenge, because the court's perception would be that, well, nobody's touched it in a decade, nobody's batted an eyebrow to this, so the court would be more skeptical, and maybe there would be a higher burden for us to be able to prove that there's something wrong with it. This is a fairly fresh amendment and more ripe for a challenge because of that.
Ms. Harless, did you have any other questions?
Yeah, and it had to do with something raised in comment by Andy Jacobs and also Dustin Nana. I didn't know this was going on in Missouri, but this is going on across the nation. Is as RCV is gaining acceptance, the duopoly is fighting back by attaching top X, be it top 2, top 4, top 5 to it, which is absolutely ridiculous because you don't need that with RCV. They're trying it in Colorado as well. Unfortunately, we have a very strong independent RCV group here called RCV Colorado. It's not attached to any of the national RCV groups. We need to be very, very wary of some of these national RCV groups because they are getting behind these top X, whatever. And from what I understand, RCV Colorado was offered $1 million in donations if we would get behind a top 4 here. And fortunately, the board of directors there has a backbone and said, yeah, no. And part of that is due to the strong third party voices on their policy committee. I'm on the RCV Colorado policy committee, so is some Green Party members. But everyone keep your ears up for that because this is happening everywhere. And they are throwing big money at that because they know voters like RCV. So they're trying to find a way to defang it.
Okay, so Mr. Coleman, we're probably not going to vote on it today, but I'm very interested in doing this. I'm interested in personally volunteering some time to work on the litigation aspect of it. Let's chat about it a little bit more offline because I don't want to let it go for too long because I think it's important for you to get a filing in soon. So then if other people end up with filings, they can all get lumped together and that's fine. If the court decides that they're related issues, I just don't want you to be left in the dust while some other precedent goes forward.
Yes, thank you for that.
You are very welcome.
Willing to volunteer time as well. Both Angela and I are qualified paralegals.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah, thank you both.
So are there any other state level ballot access requests that have come up? Because if not, we are moving to the end of our meeting and we're going to have that executive session.
Public comment first. Sorry, Madam Chair.
Yes, okay, that's totally fine. Does anyone have public comment? I see the chat has been quite active, which is great. Okay, so we've got Stephen Akil, but you're on the EC, so let's let Carlin go first, if that's all right.
Hi, can I go?
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, excellent. I just wanted to piggyback off of what was said earlier. I know that not everyone is thrilled with my candidacy for governor or Jeremy Kauffman's candidacy for United States Senate, but the fact of the matter is that life doesn't actually happen on Twitter. And, you know, I have been a figurehead nationally and actually at the state level for the last 2 years in the fight against critical race theory in schools, indoctrination in schools, and now I'm working very hard to do everything I can to change culture, to get the populace more comfortable with the idea of removing the government from schools entirely. I have gotten over 30 million views on content related to this topic area on a national level over the last year and a half. And, you know, spicy tweets aside that are taken out of context and are not, and are personal matters and not related to anything politically, the fact of the matter is that the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire does have a really great opportunity at getting ballot access this year. What people don't know is that I spent basically the entirety of 2021 traveling around the state directly working with voters in real life. And what we're finding in our petitioning efforts is that I actually do have pretty decent name recognition in the state, and shocking for people who live on Twitter, but they do actually like what I'm saying and they do like my talking points. So I just want to thank everyone for granting the $5,000 for ballot access to New Hampshire. And I would like to encourage anyone that does not like our candidates this time around, you know, you have a chance to move to New Hampshire, join the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire, and come to convention and run for candidacy yourself. And maybe next time it'll go a different way. Thank you.
Thank you, Carlin. Let's go to Brett Ryan and then our parliamentarian, Richard Brown.
Hi, Brett Ryan, LP Illinois. I just wanted to do a quick thank you to everyone. I was out in Reno and everything's looking awesome. I just wanted to throw that out there to make sure you got that feedback, which I know you've already been getting. But thank you again for on behalf of Illinois. Thanks.
Thank you. Let's hear from Richard Brown.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was going to make a suggestion regarding something that came up in the very beginning of the meeting that I have heard discussed many times, and it probably needs to be clarified. And that's regarding what is meant by segregating the convention proceeds, which proceeds need to be segregated and which do not. And there are two ways of clarifying this. One, of course, is to amend the policy manual, which could be done by adding a sentence to that section. It's Article 2.03, subsection 12, regarding special events. But another method is simply with a point of order. And if someone would just raise a point of order, much the way that Karen Ann Harlow's brought this up earlier, and just state, you know, point of order, Madam Chairman, is it correct that convention proceeds only include these items and do not include those items? You can rule on that point of order. That puts it in the minutes, so now you have an official record of it. Or if you want to cinch your ruling, somebody can then appeal from your ruling and let the executive committee, you know, probably vote to sustain your ruling. But as I thought about this, it's something that actually might be more appropriate to come up before the entire LNC. But I just wanted to mention that I have heard this question come up before several times in the past, and you, at a minimum, you need to get it in the minutes and then perhaps consider an amendment to the policy manual later at some point.
Ms. Harless, did you want to respond to that? And then we
Yeah.
should hear from Mr. Nikela.
Well, I was just going to tell Mr. Brown that I have it on my list to propose a policy manual amendment. I think that's the most permanent and expeditious, well, permanent, it can be amended in the
Okay.
future, but the clearest way to handle.
Okay.
And
Yeah,
that's fine.
Okay, yeah, I appreciate the input. I don't know if I want to raise a point of order at the end after everything is gone, but we have this very public live streamed record if there's any question as to what transpired. Okay, let's hear from Mr. Nikela now. Thank you for your patience.
Just real quick before everybody hops off, usually do after we get into executive session. I just wanted to give a big shout out to Bill Redpath. And for those that don't know, Bill has been in this party before I've been born. Not to say Bill's old, but I'm pretty young. I've been active since 2012. I've been a board member with Bill. He's been nothing but professional. I just want to commend his efforts on ballot access. And people like Bill, and really Bill specifically, is the reason why we have the ballot access that we have in 50 states plus DC. You know, it's incredibly difficult. It's incredibly cost prohibitive, but we manage regardless of the boundaries that are set before us. It's the reason why the Libertarian Party is currently a threat. It's the reason why the other parties consistently put ballot access restrictions on us. And it is also a reason why, you know, we had the socialists come on in 2016 for a little while trying to get in our ballot access. It's something that is highly coveted. It's something that's extremely valuable. And the next time you see Bill, buy him a beer, buy him dinner, because his work and the work of the ballot access committee is probably the most important work that we do as an LNC in order to help the states maintain this level of ballot access nationwide. So I just wanted to give a shout out to Bill and the ballot access committee for their efforts from the past up now into the future. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Stephen, just wanted to say thank you very much for your kind comments.
Of course. Thank you, sir.
I second his comments if it's necessary.
We can all second it. Okay, so I believe the next item on the agenda is to move into executive session. Thank you, everyone, for attending. I am not a fan of executive session. I'm sorry we're going into it, but occasionally it happens. And until we have a way that we can limit these sort of discussions just to our party members and not to the general public, we're going to have to deal with it this way. But on that note, I do intend at some point in the future to try to work something out where we can have verified members in on discussions about strategy and just it not be live streamed to the public. So that's on my to-do list. So I will take a moment for our executive director to set everything up. And